Thank you, Charlie. Mr. Pellet, the voice of Wall Street and the New York subway, for that matter, will be back in about 20 minutes' time here with the latest on the Tuesday trade. Thank you for joining us on Balance of Power. It's great to see you here on Bloomberg Radio and on YouTube. Search Bloomberg Business News Live to find us on YouTube. Unless you've got YouTube TV at home, flip over to Bloomberg Originals. You can watch us every day here on Balance of Power. So lawmakers are back in town. Everyone's getting back to reality this week, just like you are. And the president gathered House Republicans today over at the Kennedy Center. The Kennedy Center, still called that, even though they changed the letters on the side of the building. I mention it because there was actually a piece of legislation that moved last evening. It's going to go before rules today. 3 appropriations bills, one of them for the interior. It does not include any change of the name for the Kennedy Center. As a matter of fact, there were a couple of efforts here to rename the Kennedy Center Trump Kennedy Center and also to rename the Opera House after the First Lady, Melania Trump. Neither made it into the final bill. So who's in charge around here anyway? We turn to the shower in the Rules Committee meeting that will take place later on this evening. Have you heard about the Shower Act? You know how the president talks about this a lot when he was on the stump? He talks about the washing machines, the water pressure, the toilet. He says you have to keep flushing. You keep pressing the button and I don't know how many appliances he's using on a regular basis, but he does shower. And when it comes to water pressure, this is a personal issue for the president, as he made clear back in April when he signed an executive order making it possible for people to increase the water pressure in their bathroom, removing efficiency standards to give us all beautiful hair. Listen.
You take a shower or wash your hands, whatever you do, including dishwashers when no water comes out, but you wash your hands, and in my case, I like to take a nice shower to take care of my beautiful hair. I have to stand under the shower for 15 minutes till it gets wet. It comes out drip, drip, drip. It's ridiculous.
The drip, drip, drip will go before the Rules Committee this evening, the Shower Act. See, this is how it works. The president sets the agenda. The Republican conference writes the bill, and it's going to move this evening through the Rules Committee. The Shower Act, it stands for Saving Homeowners from Overregulation with Exceptional Rinsing. It will redefine a shower head to follow the president's EO. This is where we start our conversation with Nathan Dean, the senior U.S. policy analyst at Bloomberg Intelligence. Will humor me for at least a moment on this. Do you ever have a bad hair day?
All the
because
time.
of the water pressure?
Yeah, it's like, I'm not exactly sure about the water pressure, but, we saw this bill come out.
Yeah.
And the first thing I thought of is there investing angle here? Because we have
Right.
to, see, is there a stock out there?
Is there like a new class of shower head that we'll all be buying?
I couldn't go there, but I would say is that even if this bill doesn't pass, I have to see this bill trying to get into a CR or something like that, because
Yes.
there's some lobbyist around this town right now who's going, yes, I need this bill
Right,
through.
yeah.
And, so, if we get to a CR with the government shut down, then maybe this bill goes through.
It might be exceptional rinsing that keeps the government open.
Yeah,
You ever
exactly.
see the hair on producer James? This guy needs some more water pressure.
Hey, it's a thing. I think my son after football sometimes would prefer if he had a pressure washer. That's how much.
See, that's right. I get it. All right. So America's Dad is back with us, and we're going to talk about some important things here beyond the Shower Act. Yes, CC, America's hair is what we're talking about today. And I think that's a breaking story at any time. I don't know that the president brought this up at the Kennedy Center earlier today, but he did talk about the agenda, and he's trying to get some momentum here, Nathan Dean, for the midterms and a period of time that's very delicate for lawmakers because we've already gone over the so-called cliff, the Obamacare cliff. Premiums are rising, and we have a funding deadline at the end of the month. Add a couple strikes in Venezuela. Everybody's upset about war powers, or they're defending the president on war powers, and there's a worry that we slide into a shutdown again because of arguments over, in this case, defense appropriations. Where's your head on this?
We're still at 30% of a shutdown chance
Okay.
at the end of this month.
That's not bad, actually.
It's one of those things where if over the weekend, I think Senator Schumer was doing some of the Sunday shows, and he effectively ruled out a shutdown from the Democratic perspective. Look, the Democrats want to talk about affordability, and the American populace, as we've seen from polling about the response to Venezuela this past weekend, the American populace is sort of still thinking about affordability as we go into the midterms. So, from the Democratic perspective, I really don't think you're going to see much in the ways of a shutdown. From the Republican perspective, yes, you are going to see this push for potentially a little bit additional funding in terms of defense.
Yep.
But we had a call amongst our defense analysts, and we said, is this going to be additional funding where our stocks and the companies that we cover are going to get excited about? Or are we talking about incremental? And the consensus from that call was this is incremental. So this is something where I don't think it's going to be very controversial. Yes, it could be some hiccups, but if you have a hiccup, that means you get a continuing resolution. And a continuing resolution that puts us to March probably gives Congress more time to actually get their ducks in a row to figure out how they're going to get this fiscal spending over the line.
So that's your base case, though, right? We have a short CR, not some sort of many months long CR, and actual minibuses are passed and signed into law. That's what this will look like.
Yeah, I think that I don't think Congress can get there by the end of this month. Look, the fact that the language was not included about the Kennedy Center in there, you could take it as saying, hey, let's get some of these poison pills out of here to try and get this thing moving forward. Yeah. I'm just speculating on that. But, if Congress can't figure it out, they do what they do great. They kick the can. They get it to February or March. They give them a little bit more time because, look, we've talked about this as we were talking about this in December. Congress doesn't actually have that much of a to-do list in 2026. Yes, the Shower Act is important.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
We will talk about a crypto market structure bill probably in the next few weeks about whether that can pass or not. But Congress really doesn't have all that much to do. We have very low odds on a reconciliation bill passing this year. And so it gives them time, and there's a lot of focus is going to be on appropriations. I don't think Congress really has, that much else they really need to do at this point. So kicking the can to March isn't the worst case scenario for them.
Really interesting. Beyond the actual government funding that needs to be managed somehow this month, we've got an important vote. It looks like it's going to be Wednesday into Thursday this week on extending Obamacare subsidies. This is the discharge petition that we talked a lot about before the new year. You had a couple of legislative days. It's forced to the floor this week, but there's no discharge petition in the Senate.
Nope.
And, there's no answer or echo for this bill in the upper chamber. Is there, even if it passes overwhelmingly, does John Thune do anything about it?
So my colleague Dwayne Wright has a note out on the terminal and essentially says, look, skeptical, long odds that any solution is found. But there are two scenarios that could come out of this. One is this bill passes the House and then it goes to the Senate and it serves as a foundation for additional debate. Senator Moreno was even saying last night that, there were talks. I don't want to say they were fruitful talks, but there were still talks. So maybe this continues those talks. But the more likely scenario, according to Dwayne, is that the bill comes out of the House, goes to the Senate, and the Senate just says, thanks, but no thanks. We're just going to let the clock run out on this. Because even though there are some members of the Republican Party that want to see these extensions, continue, the bulk of the House Republican Party is against this. And I think a lot of lawmakers around up on Capitol Hill at the moment would just be comfortable if these subsidies expire and we move on to other debates. So again, Dwayne has pretty skeptical views towards this.
Well, I guess that hasn't changed a lot then. Let me ask you about the latest on cannabis. Do you let your kids watch this? This is grown-up talk, right?
They don't want to watch it.
They wouldn't do this anyway. They wouldn't get this far into the interview.
No, on YouTube, they want to watch other things.
Fine. That's it. We'll keep it that way. The DEA says rescheduling marijuana, the appeal process remains pending, despite the president's EO that we've talked about a lot. And there's now this new joint status report illuminating allegations of agency bias, improper communications with anti-rescheduling parties. Is this thing on ice for now? What's happening?
So I think there's a disconnect between the marijuana investors who think that when President Trump signed that executive order, rescheduling happened via magic wand, and the Washington realities of that. And there's a lot of folks out there because there's a lot of retail sentiment in these hot sauce stocks that we've talked about here. But the reality is that when it comes to Washington, as you know all too well, it doesn't move fast. So even if an executive order comes out, look, President Trump's shower executive order came out months ago, and it took it to this point to actually get a House vote. Now, when it comes to the DEA in particular, that I think here, the Terrence Cole, the administrator of the DEA, he gets the executive order, and in this positive scenario, meaning that reschedulization happens quickly, he looks at it and says, look, what is the bare minimum that we have to do to get this to reschedulization without a way of having any court come back and say you went too fast or anything like that? I think that ends with reschedulization in the first half of this year. So call it maybe April 20th. Who knows? But what I'll say is that if you're looking at this through the positive lens, It's happening. Otherwise, you're looking at this through the slower lens, and you're going to have this stalled process at the end. But at the end of the day, presidents don't sign executive orders if they don't want them to have them done. So I actually think President Trump is waiting for that time where this is actually going to be very beneficial, perhaps to the 2026 midterms. But I do think reschedulization is on the cards.
Really interesting. Are you still getting calls about this? Like, what's the mindset of the cannabis investor here? Is there patience? Eat an edible, check back in a couple months, or is there a paranoia that this is all about to fall apart?
The main question that we get is this actually news, or is this just fluff? And that is the number one question. Is every single time you see President Trump go through one of these actions, they want to know, is it the playbook where President Trump makes a positive statement, these hot sauce stocks go up 15, 20%, then nothing gets done over the next couple of weeks, MSOS is back down, off of
burned again.
So it's one of those things where, is this actually new? And what we go back to is we say, look, reschedulization changes the tax code for a lot of these mom and pop marijuana companies. The effective tax rate goes from about 40% to about 10%. It doesn't do all that much for the industry. Legalization is still not there, and banking is still not there. So that small tax relief is what you're going to get. You're not getting anything else.
Got it. Amazing. What do you kids watch on YouTube?
The NFL stuff. Like,
really? Sports?
And TikTok.
They watch other people play video games? I haven't figured that out. They watch other people playing games.
Roblox.
As opposed to playing the games.
Yep.
My best to your family. That's Nathan D. on Bloomberg.